All right, so today we're gonna take a deep dive into something that that's really got me kind of scratching my head.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Japan, right? Modern country, super densely populated, but they haven't really seen those huge Islamic terrorist attacks like we have in other parts of the world. It's kind
Right.
of like what are they doing differently over there? Well, the source material for this deep dive is it's actually an excerpt from this audio thing online called "Japan, No Country for Islam. Here's Why."
Interesting title.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely got some pretty interesting points.
Well, and one of the things that it brings up that I found really fascinating is how Japan has this really strong distinction between what they consider to be Japanese and non-Japanese.
Yeah,
And it's not just like a nationality thing or even like what you look like. It goes way deeper than that.
it's like a whole cultural mindset, right? The
Exactly.
source actually brings up the example of the Korean population in Japan, which is huge, by the way, like 700,000 people. Many of them have been there for generations,
Wow.
but they're still often seen as outsiders,
Mm.
which is kind of wild when you think about how other countries, like Western countries, approach, immigration and integration.
It really shows you how different those cultural perspectives are.
Yeah,
The source even makes this comparison between London,
okay.
which has a Muslim mayor, Sadiq Khan, and he's actually said that terror attacks are basically just part of life in a big city.
Wow.
And then you have Tokyo, the biggest city in the world,
Yeah.
relatively untouched by that kind of violence. So is that all down to just demographics? Or is it something more? Is it how Japan sees its place in the world?
Well, and speaking of demographics, the source also digs into the actual numbers of Muslims in Japan. And it's actually pretty small, isn't it?
It is. Japan doesn't really keep official records on religious affiliation, so we're kind of going off of estimates here.
Right.
But scholars like Hiroshi Kojima and Kyo Sakurai, they've estimated the Muslim population to be around 70,000 people,
Okay.
which is like 0.05% of the whole population.
Wow.
And most of those folks are foreign-born residents.
That is a tiny percentage when you compare it to, say, Europe.
Oh, yeah.
So is it just the small number that explains the lack of attacks, or is there something else going on? Because the source seems to suggest that Japan has actually taken some active steps
Oh,
to
definitely.
try and kind of mitigate any potential threats.
Yeah, and some of those steps are pretty controversial too.
Okay.
It's important to remember that Japan has had its own experience with terrorism.
Right.
The source mentions this incident back in 2016,
Right.
where 7 Japanese citizens were murdered in Bangladesh
Oh, wow.
just because they couldn't recite the Quran.
Oh, my God.
And that event, along with some others, seems to have solidified their stance on security.
It's like they've drawn a hard line in the sand.
Where?
Like they're saying this is not going to happen here. And the source even uses this term virtue signaling to talk about what they see as the more like open borders approach in other countries.
Right.
And they contrast that with Japan's focus on protecting their citizens above everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But then here's where things get a little uncomfortable. Because the source reveals that Japan has this massive surveillance program that targets its Muslim population.
Wow.
I mean, we're talking leaked police documents from way back in 2010
Okay.
showing people's personal info, their financial records, even undercover agents planted in mosques.
Really?
Yeah, and what's even more surprising is how Japan reacted to all of this.
Or didn't react?
Yeah, exactly. Like, no big protests, no media outrage.
Huh. It really makes you wonder how different cultures view privacy, and what's considered okay when it comes to security.
It's like the idea of Islamophobia, which is such a hot topic in a lot of Western countries. It just doesn't seem to carry the same weight in Japan.
Right.
Almost like it goes back to this whole Japanese versus non-Japanese thing we were talking about.
Yeah, maybe that strong national identity means they have a lower tolerance for anything that seems like a threat, even if it's not really a threat.
Yeah, and then it gets even more complicated when you consider that Japan's highest court actually upheld the government's right to run this whole program.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow, that's a pretty strong statement.
it is. It's definitely a different approach than what we see in a lot of other countries where these policies are usually met with a ton of pushback and debate.
Yeah, for sure.
It really makes you think about the long-term consequences of taking such a hard line. It's wild, right? Like on one hand, you have Japan so high-tech, cutting edge, and then on the other, they're doing stuff that feels straight out of like a spy movie.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around. But it makes you think, doesn't it? Like, if we can get past that initial, whoa, what are they doing? There are some real questions there.
Like what?
Well, the source mentions undercover agents, right? Undercover agents. That's crazy. So what kind of training are we talking about here? Are there laws that actually allow this kind of infiltration? And the big question, do they actually work? I mean, are these tactics effective in stopping terrorism?
Well, and that's what this source keeps coming back to, right? This whole zero tolerance policy for terrorism. It's like they saw what happened in other countries, Bangladesh, and said, not here. But but what's the cost of that?
Yeah, is it sustainable, like in the long term? And is it even ethical? Even if it works, are we okay with giving up some of our freedom to feel safe?
And what about the Muslims who live in Japan? I mean, are they always under suspicion? Does it get like a culture of fear?
You know, the source doesn't really talk about the impact on people's lives, like the social and psychological effects of these policies. I
Mm.
mean, we've seen in other places that surveillance can make people censor themselves, isolate themselves, even become more radicalized. I wonder if there's been any research on how this has affected the Muslim community in Japan.
That would be interesting to see. And there's also the potential for abuse, right? Anytime you have a system like this, there's a chance it could be used to target people based on their religion or their ethnicity or their political beliefs.
Right. Not because they're actually dangerous, but because someone doesn't like them. So even if Japan has good intentions, there has to be some transparency, some way to hold them accountable and make sure they're not misusing this power.
It's this constant battle between security and freedom, isn't it? And it seems like Japan has chosen security, but is that the only way? Are there other options that could find more of a balance?
That's what I find so interesting about this whole thing. It makes you look at your own biases because it's so easy to look at what Japan's doing and be like, oh, no way, that would never fly here. But you have to remember their system is built on their history, their culture, their values. So what led them to this specific model and what can we learn from it, good and bad?
Yeah, it's a good reminder that there's no one-size-fits-all solution, right? Every country has to find its own path, but we have to keep talking about it, asking the tough questions, looking at it from different angles, because this is too important to just ignore.
Absolutely. As we wrap this up, what do you think about all this? Does Japan's approach make you feel more or less safe? What about the impact on other countries dealing with terrorism?
You know, it's funny, we talk about globalization and how connected everyone's getting, but then you have Japan kind of doing their own thing, putting their culture and security first, even if it means being more isolated.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder if it can last. Can they keep this up in a world that's only getting more globalized? Or will they have to change, find some way to balance their values with how the world's changing?
And how would they even do that? Their whole society is built on this idea of everyone being the same. So how do you let outsiders in without messing that up? It's a real head scratcher.
It is, but there's a lot we can learn from it. Even if we don't agree with everything they do, they've stopped those big terror attacks. So what's the takeaway? Is it about having a stronger national identity or being tougher on security? Or both?
I think it also makes us look at our own biases. It's easy to dismiss Japan and say, oh, that's just them. It wouldn't work here. But maybe there are pieces we could use.
For sure. And it starts with being honest about what matters most. Are we willing to give up some freedom for safety? And where's the line? These aren't easy questions.
Yep. And that's why this whole deep dive is so important. It's not about saying Japan has all the answers. It's about seeing things differently and asking the tough questions so we can actually talk about these things.
Exactly. The goal is to find what works for each country, right? Solutions that keep people safe and free and treat everyone with respect. It's hard, but we can't ignore it.
So as we wrap up this look at how Japan handles security, one last thing to think about. In a world that's getting more and more connected, how do we balance keeping people safe with protecting freedom and culture? Something we all have to figure out as can keep shaping the world for a long time. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next Deep Dives.